It was in the month of June, in that memorable year of 1902, that London, usually a city of industrious hum and occasional fog-shrouded mystery, throbbed with an unprecedented current of joyous expectation. The air itself seemed charged with the golden dust of impending royalty. King Edward VII's coronation, long anticipated, now stood but days away. Flags, bunting and commemorative effigies of the monarch adorned every street and thoroughfare, and the general populace, usually reserved in its expressions, was now a single, smiling entity, drunk on patriotism and pageantry. In our modest lodgings at 221B Baker Street, however, the atmosphere remained, for the most part, untroubled by the prevailing ebullience. My good friend, Mr. Sherlock Holmes, if he noted the public's merriment at all, did so with the detached, almost clinical interest of an entomologist observing a particularly animated colony of ants. His lean figure, often stretched upon the sofa, lay not in repose but in a state of coiled intensity, his keen grey eyes scanning the daily papers not for coronation updates, but for the subtle tremors in the social fabric that heralded the arrival of a new conundrum. My own observations, penned diligently in my journal, confirm my suspicion that the lack of a suitable case was inflicting upon him a malaise far deeper than any seasonal ailment. "Watson," he remarked one overcast morning, snapping a sheet of newsprint, "have you ever considered the precise mechanism by which a nation, collectively, persuades itself that the spectacle of one man placing an antiquated bauble upon his head is worthy of such universal acclaim and expense?" I looked up from my own breakfast, a perfectly acceptable kipper. "It is, Holmes, a matter of tradition, continuity, and the symbolism of national unity." He merely grunted, a sound that conveyed his utter lack of satisfaction with my philosophical offering. Indeed, a triumph of sentiment over sense, I dare say. And yet one cannot help but admire the sheer logistical audacity of it all. Imagine, Watson, the myriad threads of planning, the subtle pressures, the unspoken agreements that underpin such a colossal public event. A single misplaced cog in that intricate machinery could bring the entire edifice crashing down. His words, spoken with a peculiar emphasis, resonated in my mind for the rest of the day. As evening descended, drawing a cloak of soft grey over the jubilant city, a sense of unease, quite independent of my friend's pronouncements, began to settle upon me. It was not until past 10 o'clock, when the clamour of the street had subsided to a muted murmur, that a sharp, insistent knock rattled our door. Holmes, who had been engaged in some abstruse chemical experiment involving a retort and a particularly noxious-smelling liquid, straightened up instantly. His nostrils flared and his head cocked, a hunter sensing game. Not a hansom, Watson. The precise rhythm of footsteps, ascending the 17 steps, the slight hesitancy before the knock, a gentleman of some standing, yet accustomed to deference. And the knock itself, firm, yet restrained, as if announcing an urgent matter that must, above all, remain discreet. I had barely risen when Mrs. Hudson, looking rather flustered, ushered in our visitor. He was a man of perhaps 50, impeccably dressed in evening wear, though his usually stern features were etched with an unmistakable air of profound distress. His greying temples and a certain weary authority in his bearing marked him as someone accustomed to command. It was Sir James Trelawney, a name I recognised as a pivotal figure within the royal household, a trusted aide and a man whose reputation for discretion was legendary. "Mr. Holmes," he began, his voice surprisingly hoarse. "Forgive this unannounced intrusion at such an hour, but the matter I bring before you is of the utmost gravity. I dare say the very stability of the realm, and perhaps even the international standing of our nation, hinges upon your immediate assistance." Holmes waved him to a chair, his eyes already dissecting the man before him. "Pray, be seated, Sir James. Your countenance alone suggests a burden of truly exceptional weight. A brandy, perhaps? Watson, a glass for Sir James." The knight, accepting the offered restorative with a trembling hand, took a fortifying sip. "Thank you, Doctor. Gentlemen, I come to you not as a representative of any government department, but by the direct, albeit discreet, instruction of the highest authority in the land. A catastrophe, Mr. Holmes, has befallen us, one which, if allowed to become public, would dwarf any political scandal in living memory." He then launched into his narrative, his words carefully chosen, each syllable weighted with the dreadful import of his revelation. The Crown's ledger. The name itself sent a chill down my spine. It was a private, meticulously maintained volume handed down through generations of the royal family, detailing not merely their financial transactions, but a far more dangerous trove of information. The indiscretions, the secret debts, the delicate political manoeuvrings, and the private vulnerabilities of successive monarchs and their closest kin. A veritable Pandora's box, Sir James explained, a weapon of unparalleled destructive potential in the wrong hands. "This book," he continued, his gaze fixed somewhere beyond us, as if reliving the moment of its discovery, was kept under the most stringent security within a private archive in St. James's Palace. Only a handful of individuals, myself included, even knew of its existence, let alone its precise location. And yet, Mr. Holmes, it is gone. Holmes leaned forward, his elbows on his knees, fingers steepled before his chin. "And the thief, Sir James?" "That, Mr. Holmes, is where the matter becomes even more precarious. The theft was discovered 3 days ago. The culprit, we believe, is a Monsieur Antoine Dubois, a seemingly unassuming attaché from the French embassy. He was, until very recently, quite active in Anglo-French diplomatic circles, known for his subtle charm and impeccable manners. He vanished without a trace 48 hours ago, leaving behind a note suggesting he had been suddenly recalled to Paris due to family illness. A clear deception, we now know. Dubois, a French attaché, Holmes mused, his eyes half closed. And the timing, Sir James, days before the coronation. A rather audacious enterprise, would you not agree? Audacious indeed, Mr. Holmes, and profoundly dangerous. If this ledger were to fall into the hands of, say, a hostile power or even an unscrupulous journalist, the fallout, well, it simply does not bear thinking about. The very perception of the monarchy, the stability of the nascent entente cordiale, perhaps even the international financial markets could be thrown into disarray. The King himself, Mr. Holmes, is gravely concerned. "Understandably so," Holmes replied, rising and pacing the small confines of our room, his hands clasped behind his back. "A rogue agent, you believe? Or is there any indication that Monsieur Dubois might be acting on behalf of the French government or a faction thereof?" Sir James shook his head emphatically. "Absolutely not. The French ambassador, when discreetly approached, was genuinely shocked and mortified. Dubois has simply disappeared. No official recall, no knowledge of his whereabouts. He appears to have severed all ties." "A clever man, then, our Monsieur Dubois," Holmes murmured, "to penetrate such a secure archive and to vanish so completely. Tell me, Sir James, what were the circumstances surrounding the discovery of the theft? Any signs of forced entry? Any peculiarities?" Sir James detailed the scene: a subtly manipulated lock on a seemingly impenetrable safe, a faint trace of an unfamiliar scent, a single discarded cigarette butt of a brand unknown to the palace staff. The security guards, all highly vetted, had seen nothing untoward. "Ingenious," Holmes observed. "A man of considerable nerve and skill. Watson, our pursuit begins tonight. This is not merely a common theft, but a game of international chess played with the highest stakes. Sir James, I shall require every detail of Dubois' known associates, his habits, his financial dealings, and any recent unusual activities, however trivial they may seem." The following morning, after a mere 3 hours' sleep, I found Holmes already immersed in a vast array of documents provided by Sir James. Maps of London were spread across the Persian rug, crisscrossed with lines and annotations. "Our Monsieur Dubois, Watson," Holmes began without looking up from a dossier, "is a fascinating study. A man of humble origins who, through sheer force of intellect and a remarkable capacity for mimicry, ascended the diplomatic ladder. Fluent in 6 languages, a connoisseur of rare wines and a collector of antiquarian maps. Yet he carries an old scar on his left wrist, consistent with a sabre wound. Unlikely for a diplomat. And his tailor, a rather obscure establishment in St. James's, notes that Dubois recently ordered a suit with an unusually deep inner breast pocket. Curious, is it not? A pocket for a pistol, perhaps? I suggested. Holmes gave a dismissive flick of his wrist. Far too crude, Watson. My instinct tells me Dubois is no common thug. The Crown's ledger, while undeniably valuable for its contents, is not something one sells on the open market. The value lies in its leverage. Dubois intends to use it, not merely dispose of it. Our first port of call was Dubois' former lodgings, a tastefully appointed set of rooms in Mayfair, now cordoned off by discreet agents of the Crown. Holmes, with his usual blend of authority and cunning, gained immediate access. The rooms, though seemingly pristine, yielded a surprising bounty to Holmes's discerning eye. "Observe, Watson," he pointed to a faint, barely perceptible indentation on the heavy mahogany writing desk. A small circular mark, repeatedly made, not from a pen stand, nor an inkwell. Something larger, heavier. And see here the faint, almost invisible dust beneath the desk, a peculiar reddish-brown hue. Not common London dust. He then, much to my bewilderment, began to sniff at various objects. A discarded scarf, a volume of Voltaire, even the very air itself. "Ah," he declared, with a triumphant gleam in his eyes, "the subtle notes of Turkish tobacco, of a very specific blend, not commonly found in London. And, beneath that, something else, a faint, almost metallic tang, reminiscent of a particular type of engraving ink, used only by a handful of specialist printers. And this, Watson, this is most peculiar." He pointed to a small, almost microscopic splinter embedded in the rug beside the fireplace. Oak, undoubtedly, but a specific variety, dark, aged and highly polished. Over the next few hours, Holmes wove these disparate threads into a coherent tapestry. The circular indentation, he deduced, was likely made by a large ornate seal, possibly used to authenticate forged documents. The reddish-brown dust, he believed, was not dust at all, but the residue of a specialized pigment, one often used in the restoration of antique maps. The Turkish tobacco, a clue pointing to a particular expatriate cafe in Soho frequented by continental intellectuals. The oak splinter, a piece of a finely crafted wooden box, perhaps a custom case. "Dubois, Watson," Holmes explained as we hailed a hansom towards Soho, "is not merely a diplomat. He is a master forger, a subtle manipulator, and a man with a distinct appreciation for the art of deception. The ledger itself, I believe, is not his ultimate goal. It is a tool to acquire something else entirely." Our visit to the cafe in Soho was brief but fruitful. Holmes, after a casual conversation with the proprietor regarding the quality of his Turkish coffee, managed to elicit the information that Dubois had indeed been a regular, but had recently taken to meeting a peculiar individual. A stout, heavily bearded man with a penchant for discussing obscure historical texts and a strong German accent. The man, the proprietor recalled, always paid in pre-1871 German marks, a rather antiquated currency. "German marks, Watson," Holmes observed as we left the cafe, "and an interest in historical texts. Our game grows more complex. Dubois is not merely stealing a ledger, he is likely exchanging it or using it as a bargaining chip for something he considers of equal or greater value to his mysterious German associate." We spent the next day pursuing this new line of inquiry, sifting through arcane historical societies and obscure booksellers. It was in a dusty, dimly lit antiquarian bookshop near Charing Cross that Holmes's eyes, scanning a shelf of ancient atlases, suddenly narrowed. He pulled down a massive leather-bound volume, its pages filled with intricate hand-drawn maps. "This, Watson," he announced, tapping a finger on a particular map of the Rhineland, "is a rare edition, printed in Breslau in 1868. And observe a small subtle ink stain on the lower right corner, a distinctive shade of Prussian blue. The same hue, I believe, as the engraving ink I detected in Dubois' rooms." He then engaged the shop owner, a frail, spectacled man with an encyclopedic knowledge of cartography, in a seemingly innocent conversation about the map's provenance. Gradually, Holmes steered the discussion to recent visitors interested in such rare items. The owner, after some deliberation, recalled a customer matching Dubois' description, accompanied by a burly German gentleman, who had shown a particular interest in a companion volume to this atlas, a single loose map that detailed a specific small estate in the Black Forest region. The map, the owner explained, was unique, as it showed a hidden crypt or cellar beneath the estate, omitted from all official records. "A crypt, Watson," Holmes said, his voice barely a whisper as we left the shop, "and a German associate paying in pre-1871 marks. The pieces, my dear fellow, are beginning to interlock with a dreadful precision. Dubois is not acting for profit alone, nor simply for political destabilization. This has the reek of personal vengeance, interwoven with a deeply rooted historical grievance. I believe, Watson, that Dubois is seeking something concealed within that German crypt, something he believes the Crown's ledger will help him unlock." Through a series of ingenious deductions based on the specific historical period of the German marks and the subtle clues in the map, Holmes identified the German associate as Herr Klaus von Richter, a descendant of a minor German aristocratic family that had been dispossessed of their lands after the Franco-Prussian War, with a subtle but significant role played by British diplomatic pressures at the time. Their ancestral estate, the one with the hidden crypt, had been particularly valuable due to a rumoured vast treasure of ancient Saxon gold, hidden there for centuries, which the Richter family believed was rightfully theirs. "So, Watson," Holmes explained that evening, as he meticulously polished his magnifying glass, "Dubois, a Frenchman, whose family perhaps suffered losses during those same conflicts, has allied with von Richter, a German whose family was ruined. Both share a common enemy, the British Crown, which they blame directly or indirectly for their families' respective misfortunes. The Crown's ledger, with its detailed accounts of historical negotiations and land deals, would contain the precise historical evidence needed to either locate the treasure or, more likely, legitimize von Richter's claim to it, potentially with international legal ramifications that would cause immense embarrassment to the British. Dubois uses the ledger as leverage to gain access to, or a share in, the hidden German gold, thereby avenging himself and enriching his associate. The implications were staggering. Not only was the Crown's ledger at stake, but the potential for a fresh diplomatic incident, fueled by historical grievances and a rediscovered fortune, threatened to engulf Europe. The coronation, intended as a symbol of peace and prosperity, would be utterly overshadowed. Holmes, with a rare sense of urgency, immediately dispatched a coded message to Sir James Trelawney, detailing his discoveries and his plan. Time was of the essence. Dubois, Holmes deduced, intended to rendezvous with von Richter in a secluded villa on the Kent coast, from where they would likely embark for Germany. The specific details of this villa were gleaned from a subtle postmark on a letter found tucked away in Dubois' lodgings, a letter ostensibly from a distant relative, but containing a veiled reference to a particular seaside retreat. "We must act swiftly, Watson," Holmes declared, rising from his chair with a renewed vigour. "Our quarry is about to make for the Channel. We shall intercept them before they can set foot on foreign soil." Our journey to the Kent coast was undertaken in a specially arranged express train, the urgency of our mission underscored by the grim faces of the 2 Scotland Yard detectives who accompanied us, though they remained largely in the dark as to the true nature of the stakes. The secluded villa, nestled amidst a clump of windswept trees overlooking the grey expanse of the Channel, was exactly as Holmes had predicted. The sun was just beginning to dip below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of bruised purple and fiery orange as we approached the villa. Holmes, ever the strategist, outlined his plan. Discretion was paramount. Any overt police action could lead to a confrontation, potentially damaging the ledger or causing a public spectacle. "We must surprise them, Watson," he whispered, his eyes scanning the quiet grounds, "and prevent any diplomatic incident. The ledger must be recovered silently and without official notice." Holmes, with the agility of a cat, scaled a low wall and melted into the shadows of the garden. I, along with the 2 detectives, positioned ourselves at strategic points around the villa, ready to assist if needed. Through a partially open window, I caught a glimpse of Dubois and von Richter inside. They were seated at a heavy oak table, a large antique map spread before them. And lying open between them, unmistakably, was the leather-bound Crown's ledger. My heart pounded against my ribs. The moment of truth was upon us. Suddenly, a voice, clear and resonant, cut through the quiet evening air from within the room. "Gentlemen, I dare say you have made a most grievous error in your calculations." I peered through the window to see Holmes standing casually in the doorway of the room, his hands clasped behind his back, a faint, almost imperceptible smile playing on his lips. Dubois and von Richter, their faces a mask of shocked disbelief, had frozen in mid-conversation. "Mr. Holmes," Dubois exclaimed, recovering his composure with a visible effort, "what is the meaning of this intrusion?" "Meaning, Monsieur Dubois, is precisely what I have come to elucidate," Holmes replied, his tone calm, almost conversational. "You see, your carefully constructed web of deceit, while ingenious, possessed a few fatal flaws. The Turkish tobacco, your penchant for antiquarian maps of a specific region, your associates' archaic choice of currency, and above all, the scar on your wrist, monsieur, which belies your diplomatic pretensions." Von Richter, a man of brute force rather than subtle intellect, snarled and made a move towards the ledger. Holmes, with a surprising burst of speed, stepped forward, placing his hand firmly on the table, directly over the precious volume. "I wouldn't advise it, Herr von Richter," Holmes said, his voice now edged with steel. "I am quite proficient in the art of unarmed combat, and I assure you my grasp of physiology permits me to render you quite harmless without causing any lasting damage. But more importantly, the game is up." He then launched into a concise, devastating summary of their plan. Dubois' family's historical grievances against the Crown, his acquisition of the ledger, his alliance with von Richter, and their intent to use the ledger to unlock the secret of the Saxon gold in the German crypt, thereby simultaneously enriching themselves and exposing a historical scandal that would cripple the British monarchy. "Your entire scheme, gentlemen," Holmes concluded, "rests upon the assumption that the Crown's ledger holds absolute truth. Yet you failed to account for one critical detail. The volume before you, while appearing identical in every respect to the original, is in fact a masterful forgery." Dubois and von Richter stared, utterly dumbfounded. Holmes then, with a flourish, produced a small, silver-backed mirror from his breast pocket and held it before the open ledger. "Observe, gentlemen," he said, "the watermarks, and the texture of the paper, Monsieur Dubois, a detail you, as a connoisseur of fine printing, should have noted. The true Crown's ledger, you see, was never stolen. It was merely borrowed for a brief period by Sir James Trelawney for a sensitive review, and upon its return a security expert in the employ of the Crown, anticipating precisely such a move from foreign agents, had a duplicate crafted. An identical twin, down to the last ink stain. The subtle red dust in your apartment, Monsieur Dubois, was not from antique map restoration, but from the specialized pigments used to age the paper of this forgery. You were led to believe you possessed the original, while the true ledger remained safely within the palace vaults." Dubois' face crumpled in a mixture of fury and despair. Von Richter, bellowing in German, lunged, but was instantly restrained by the two detectives who had burst in at Holmes's signal. "A brilliant deception, Mr. Holmes," I murmured, my admiration for my friend soaring to new heights. "Necessity, my dear Watson, is the mother of invention," Holmes replied, calmly retrieving the forged ledger. "To recover the real ledger would have been a public affair. To allow them to believe they had it, and then to expose their plot with this rather convincing substitute, allows for a discreet and bloodless resolution. The honour of the Crown and Anglo-French relations remain untarnished. Within the hour, Dubois and von Richter were secured, their schemes utterly undone. The forged ledger, along with the evidence of their conspiracy, was packed away. The details of their apprehension, I was later told, were meticulously handled to avoid any diplomatic incident, the official report citing a far more mundane cause for their arrest. A few days later, on the very eve of the King's coronation, Sir James Trelawney paid us another visit, this time accompanied by an individual whose discreet manner and quiet authority spoke volumes. He was, I gathered, a direct emissary of the King himself. The gravity of the case and Holmes's unparalleled success in averting an international catastrophe had clearly resonated deeply within the highest echelons of power. The emissary, a man of impeccable bearing and a voice as smooth as polished oak, conveyed the King's profound gratitude. "Mr. Holmes," he announced, his gaze unwavering, "His Majesty, in recognition of your invaluable service to the Crown and to the nation, has commanded me to offer you the singular honour of a knighthood." I held my breath, anticipating my friend's reaction. A knighthood, the highest public accolade for civilian service, a testament to his genius and his selfless dedication. My heart swelled with pride for him. Holmes, however, merely inclined his head slightly, his expression one of polite deference, but utterly devoid of personal ambition. "I am deeply honoured by His Majesty's most gracious offer," he said, his voice calm and steady. "And I convey my most humble thanks for such a signal mark of favour." He paused, then continued, his eyes meeting the emissaries with a peculiar intensity. "However, I must respectfully decline. My work, you see, is its own reward. I live for the exquisite intricacies of the problem, for the challenge of unravelling the tangled skeins of human villainy. The pursuit of truth, the satisfaction of restoring order to chaos. These are the only accolades I seek." The emissary, though clearly surprised, recovered quickly, recognizing, I believe, the genuine conviction in Holmes's words. He bowed slightly, and with a final expression of gratitude, departed. I turned to Holmes, my mind reeling. "Holmes, a knighthood! The honour, the recognition! How could you refuse?" He merely smiled, a rare, gentle expression that softened the usual severity of his features. "My dear Watson, the true artist lives for his art, not for the applause of the gallery. I live for the work, not the accolade. Such distinctions, while undoubtedly gratifying to some, would, I fear, merely add an unnecessary layer of public expectation and distraction to my chosen path. The quiet satisfaction of a problem solved and the knowledge that I have played my small part in maintaining the delicate balance of justice and order is more than sufficient for me." And as the bells of London began to peal the joyous announcement of the King's impending coronation, and the city awakened to a day of unparalleled festivity, I looked at my friend, his figure silhouetted against the bustling street, and understood with a profound clarity the unique and selfless brilliance of Sherlock Holmes. He remained, as ever, the inscrutable, enigmatic master of deduction, a man who truly lived for the work and for that alone. If you enjoy our work, please consider supporting us on Patreon. The link is in the description.